Jesus Christ, it only took some DLC to tear the Final Fantasy VII Remake fandom apart. It would be funny if it wasn't so damn tragic. Now I want you to know you drove me to this. Get ready for some serious special effects. Okay, so in the beginning you had Final Fantasy fans, the majority of whom were Final Fantasy VII fans. But you'd have this 10% or so who'd say, nah, Final Fantasy VII is overrated. My favourite game is actually Final Fantasy V, and 7 doesn't deserve the attention. Whatever, that was cool. Then came the compilation, Advent Children, Crisis Core, Dirge of Cerberus. That created a rift of sorts in our Final Fantasy VII community. Some people responded positively to the expanded world of Final Fantasy VII, but there were many that refused to get on board. But at least we were united in our love for the original game, and that kept us stable as a community. However, with Final Fantasy VII Remake, the fandom was split right down the middle. You had people like me who were annoyed with the story direction Square Enix took, while the other half were madly in love with the game and the myriad of possibilities the future held. But it was different to the compilation reaction all those years before, because Square Enix had set out to remake the original game. Now you had Remake fans claiming that it was better than the original game, while others felt Remake was a huge slap in the face to the original, forcing all fans to re-evaluate what the original game meant to the community. Some fans saw it as, if you're on board with Remake and all its plot choices, then what you liked about the original game must be off kilter. There must have been something different in what you took from it, because if you liked Remake, you can't be a true fan. And on the other side of the coin, if you didn't like Remake, then you're not a true fan. In essence, Remake was pitting fan against fan in unprecedented ways. So the Remake fans told the die-hard OG fans to go away and let them embrace the new world on their own. Well, guess what? It didn't take long to break apart that new cohort, and all it took was some DLC. Christ, we're still years out from Remake Part 2 and people are going full on nuclear. It's the same with every fandom. We always end up tearing ourselves apart, whether it's Star Wars or something else. I just didn't think it would happen so fast. You have the same people who were claiming Square Enix could do no wrong, and if you didn't eat what they served you, then you weren't a real fan, now turning around saying they're done with Final Fantasy because they've been cornered into needing a PS5 to finish the story. Or they're annoyed at the idea that they can't get free DLC because they were first in line to buy Remake on day one. It's a perfect storm brought about with the launch of the PS5. The next-gen monster is an expensive upgrade for many, and a source of endless frustration for those who have the cash but can't actually get their hands on one. The drama is reaching a fever pitch, fueled by resentment from those who don't see a PS5 in the near future. You have the people who had bought a PS4 for the sole purpose of playing Remake and now are fuming at the thoughts of upgrading. So you have the PS5 owners rubbing it in the faces of the PS4 owners. You bought a PS4 intending to play Remake in its entirety?
You should have thought of that earlier.
And of course you have the outright utter confusion that the DLC has caused. People who bought Remake on PS4 get a PS5 upgrade, but they don't get the DLC. For PS5 owners of the retail copy of Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate, they get the DLC, but PS4 owners of the FF7 Remake with the PS5 upgrade need to buy the DLC. What? People are confused as hell. Do you get the DLC if you own the PS5 copy of Remake? Well, no, because it's not DLC. It's part of the game, Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate, I guess. Oh, but Square Enix actually referred to it as DLC. Oh, whatever. Jesus Christ, Square, your fandom is ripping itself to shreds. Fans are contradicting one another. People are confused. And it wasn't the whispers or the weird story choices. It was some $20 DLC. That's what broke the camel's back. I'll try again. The long and short of it is, if you intend to keep playing Remake on PS4, then you'll never experience the DLC. But if you get a PS5, you can upgrade your PS4 game to a PS5 game without the DLC, which you'll need to buy. Unless you download a Remake for PS4 using PS Plus, then you don't get the upgrade. Oh, fucking hell, forget it. So what about the DLC? Well, I was expecting a PS5 upgrade with minimal quality of life improvements, so I'm a little surprised that Square Enix have run with some new character-driven content. They're moving forward Yuffie's arrival into the story. Whatever, I guess you just pick her up in a random forest in the original, so it's not exactly a terrible departure if they want to do something a bit more exciting. They have her starring in her own story while Cloud's adventure is unfolding. Square Enix really doubling down on this whole Avalanche Wutai subplot, so I guess they really are in cahoots. So much for fake news. I get the feeling all this Yuffie side stuff was already on the table early days. It probably came out of Square Enix brainstorming the whole Wutai Avalanche Shinra triangle, and that turned into bringing Yuffie into the game early. And then that turned into it being shelved in favour of telling a more cohesive and cost-effective narrative. Ugh. Or did they just think, how do we add in some content using the exact same assets? Instead of taking the story to Yuffie, let's just plant her and remake part 1 somewhere. See, this is the thing. I get that this could be considered a director's cut of sorts, adding in the full story of what was going on in the background, but in terms of the overall narrative of the game, does it make sense to be following Cloud and then suddenly jump to some random teenager searching for materia? All of it having no bearing on Cloud's story, at least within the realm of Remake Part 1 anyway, which is its own story with a beginning, middle and end, right? At the end of the DLC, maybe they'll loop her into the main story by having her cross paths with the gang, her jumping out of a tree to surprise everyone or some shit, and the narrative will make some sort of pseudo sense in that, hey look, all the characters are together. But I guess my point is, unless I'm playing as Cloud and my story is naturally enveloping Yuffie's world, then I don't really care what she's off doing while Cloud's dashing across rooftops with Aeris. Back in OG, Yuffie is completely missable. Even if you get her, you don't have to engage in her side story. Okay, the likelihood of Square Enix spending money on developing story content for a character only to bury it away somewhere is zero these days, and it's probably not reasonable for me to suggest that. In the original game, they hid Yuffie and Vincent from the FMVs, and I guess it wouldn't be reasonable to suggest Square Enix restrict their cinematic storytelling in that way. But I get the feeling that as Square Enix are locked into making Yuffie, and even Vincent, mandatory, they're going to be drumming up a sea of content to go with them. But it needs to be experienced in a natural way. Cloud is the POV of the story. What is it with Square Enix's love of choosing the most predictable, bland characterization?
My name is Yuffie, materia hunter and elite special forces operative for the new Wutai government.
Couldn't Yuffie not sound like the most average female teenager stuck in an anime? Since she's supposed to originate far off to the west in an island country, couldn't she sound just a little different to Cloud and Co? I don't know, spice it up a bit. And of course she's brought along another seemingly shallow sub-character to add to the growing roster, someone to bounce her sassiness off of. Seriously, the Final Fantasy VII world is busy enough as it is. We don't need more sub-characters with dead-end storylines. Alright, I get you're probably thinking, I haven't even played it yet, so why cast wild assumptions? I'm just going off track record. I feel like I already know what to expect, but if this DLC proves to have some brilliant storytelling with memorable characters, then I'll stand corrected. Then you get this Weiss character at the end of the trailer, this Dirge Cerberus Sephiroth reject. I called this years ago. Nomura and Square Enix could never resist adding in all the compilation cronies, and this is just the beginning, believe me. I was actually surprised they hadn't shown up yet, but here they come. Prepare for a whole host of compilation bosses, nods, side chapters, subplots and other nonsense. Anything to distract from the main thread of the story, which no doubt will be seriously condensed compared to the original game. Because in their arrogance, they can't resist retconning all this shit in. Most fans I talk to don't want this filler rubbish. It diminishes the weight of the original game. But people claim they love Remake because it now has a chance to tell the full story, whatever that means. To those people I would say that full story is an uncontrollable concept. It implies that the Final Fantasy VII universe is a living, breathing thing that is trying its best to illuminate more of its world for you that it never got a chance to the first time around. Not that the ideas for Kadaj, Laws, Yazoo, Weiss, Genesis, Deepground, the ancient city underneath Midgar were concepts that just came to random Square Enix employees on a whim. They're just tacky add-ons. And why does every new edition somehow not add more to the story but takes away from it? Do I have my nostalgia glasses on here, or does Square Enix seem incapable of landing fresh ideas that are in any way comparable to the majesty and heart of the original game? By the way, Whispers, why are you not stopping Yuffie? Why did you let her get all the way to Midgar so early? Why are you letting the timeline deviate? Shouldn't things be regular before they become irregular? Isn't that the gimmick of Final Fantasy VII Remake? The Whispers upset what we thought was set in stone, but the writers don't have a very good handle on what's established and what's not. Or are Square Enix trying to say, this is what Yuffie was always doing before you found her in the original game? So here we are in a new kind of meltdown. The remake fandom is splitting, and only now are people seeing the true face of some fans. If you dare criticise this game in any way, you're not a true Final Fantasy fan, you shouldn't be voicing your opinion, and you most definitely should take whatever Square Enix offers you. My personal feelings were Final Fantasy VII Remake was always going to play out on next gen consoles. DLC, I mean, Game of the Year editions are a thing, and we've all been burned one way or another in the past. Now you have people arguing over the lighting effects. Which is better, PS4 or PS5? Christ, buckle up guys, this is going to be fun. Anyway, the quality of life changes are welcome. Are they going to fix the weird JPEG in Midgar? Are they going to fix the blurry door? Well, they've got normal classic mode. Photo mode. Oh, please God.